Us today for the What's Next in Metaverse Fashion webinar. My name is Christina Wooten. I'm VP of Partnerships at Roblox, and we have an amazing panel of experts here today that we'll introduce shortly. But first, I want to dive into what is the metaverse. So we define the metaverse as the way people will experience the internet of the future in immersive 3D experiences, social environments while they're doing things together. And fashion is such a big part of those experiences. And so that's why we wanted to gather experts from both the physical and the digital fashion world for this chat today. So throughout this webinar, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A down below. And if we have time at the end, we'll be sure to answer those questions. Okay, so I wanted to bring on our panel of experts. So if everyone can please introduce themselves and mention your connection to an experience with fashion, and why you think looking at trends and developments in the digital fashion space is especially timely today. So Ben, if we could start with you, that would be great.
Hello, everyone. I am Ben Berry. I use he, him pronouns. I am Dean of Fashion at Parsons School of Design in New York. And my life is about fashion, and fashion in all of its forms as an incredible way to express ourselves. And part of our work at Parsons is really ensuring that there is access for fashion for all bodies and all creatives. This, the metaverse and fashion is so important because we dress in the physical world, the digital world. There's no separation. This is how we live every day. It's all the real world. And so this conversation, this work is central to me personally and to everything we're doing at Parsons.
Amazing. Thank you, Ben. Over to you, Kathy.
Hi, everyone. Kathy Hackle, excited to be here with everyone. I am the Chief Metaverse Officer. Yes, you heard that correctly. Chief Metaverse Officer at Journey. I'm also a co-founder of the company. I am probably the world's first Chief Metaverse Officer, potentially. Been working in metaverse-related industries across many different verticals for almost 10 years. So I've been in this space for a long time. I've been working very, very heavily in the fashion industry as well for the past 3 years, more on the virtual metaverse side. I believe if my research team is correct, Ryan Gill and myself coined the term direct to avatar back in 2020 when we asked the question on Forbes, is direct to avatar the next direct to consumer? Now the rest is history. I've worked with brands like Ralph Lauren to create their foundational metaverse strategy. I've worked with companies like Nike, most recently with Walmart. My team created Walmart Land and Universal Play in Roblox. And I worked with Kane Brown, Madison Beer, and several artists on their virtual couture. But I love everything I do in the virtual space, and I'm just thrilled to be here with this amazing group of panelists.
Love it. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, over to you, Gemma.
Hi, I'm Gemma Shepherd. I'm a fashion stylist, and I work internationally between UK and USA. I was a director within Gucci Group working with Tom Ford, Alexander McQueen, and then subsequently have become the global fashion director and the Metaverse first stylist for Dubbit Studio. More recently, we've been doing a lot of great projects with Charlie XCX, the Grammys, the Brits, the after parties, and actually recently with Rebecca Minkoff and also Kickers, launching the first 3D shoes, actually, which led to 24 million hits in only 4 weeks.
Thank you, Gemma. Great to have you. Over to you, Vivian.
Hi, I'm Vivian Ariano. I am a digital fashion artist for the platform Roblox. I concept and model and sell my own fashion designs. I'm also the developer and art lead for Mermaid Life, which won an innovation award for best use of avatar fashion.
Congrats. Thanks, Vivian. Jenny?
Hi, I am Jenny Swoboda, aka Love Spun on Roblox. I do UGC creations as a fashion, layer clothing, as well as also just working with a lot of brands, celebrities, most recently Carolina Herrera dress, which was a mind-blowing situation. I loved that, yeah. And Carly Kloss, Paris Hilton, Forever 21, Barbie, just a lot of brands, and been having a lot of fun doing it. And yeah, so that's me. I've been here on the metaverse. Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny. I think everybody's going to today a lot of passion coming through from this panel of experts in digital fashion and the metaverse. So let's dive into it. Next slide, please. So this week, we announced a partnership with Parsons, including a course and this research we're discussing today, the 2022 Metaverse Fashion Trends Report. And for over a decade, digital fashion has played such an important role in self-expression on Roblox. Every user journey starts with digital identity creation. People's avatars represent themselves across the platform. It helps them build connections and get recognized. And millions are socializing and creating, expressing themselves through digital fashion. And we have easy and free design and distribution tools that are fueling this creation. So over 11.5 million community creators have designed over 62 million clothing accessories items in just from Q1 to Q3 of this year. So let's discuss some of the key findings on the next slide. As Gen Z are spending more and more time socializing, creating, and expressing themselves in social immersive spaces, the demand for digital fashion, its widespread impact and prestige are on the rise. So in our survey, half of Gen Z respondents say they are changing their avatar's clothing at least weekly. 2 in 5 already consider self-expression via clothing and accessories in the digital world more important than the physical world. And over half think a digital fashion designer career is just as or more impressive than a physical fashion designer. So I want to go to the panel and just ask you guys a few questions. Let's start with Jenny. Given your personal experience as a Roblox community member and designer, why is self-expression in digital fashion already more important than physical for many?
I feel like just because of the merge of primarily the merge of the two because like I honestly genuinely think that we derive inspiration and from both realms, like real life, and from the metaverse. But I do think that it's important in the sense of self-expression. If you want to rock something that you may not be able to rock in the real world, you can do that in the metaverse, Roblox especially. And yeah, so
I totally agree. I think things that you could do in the metaverse, you just immediately want to do. You don't really think twice and you just experiment. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Definitely.
And Vivian, I want to hear from you if you see this growing influence of digital fashion for people on Roblox.
Yeah, for sure. I, for one, didn't think I'd be going into this line of work, say 7 or 8 years ago. It's definitely new and exciting to get to experiment on like this market. And I learned to get creative with clothes because of it in real life as well. It helps that I don't have to think about practical use case because it's all digital as well.
And how often do you both change your avatar style?
All the time nowadays. That's all the time. I try on new collections when I put out new things so people can see how it looks before they get it.
Yeah, my answer can kind of sort of correlate with that. It's exactly weekly or, sometimes daily. And then the same thing, if I'm releasing something new, it's definitely going on my avatar.
Amazing. And Ben, the style and prestige of a digital fashion designer career. I want to get your thoughts and if you're seeing more students interested in digital fashion design.
Oh, I mean, completely. This is so core to everything we're doing at Parsons. We have our collaborative course with you that we're launching. We have our undergraduate thesis section that with the special section on digital fashion. We have this integrated into fashion management. This is about design, communication, the entire fashion system. I think for us, right, we do have students of all ages of Parsons, but we have a core group of Gen Z. And for this generation, there's no separation between physical and metaverse or digital realms, right? We live and dress in both. And so for them, thinking about fashion is digital, it's physical, it's connected, it's separate, but it's both. And there's not that separation. And so part of design education and fashion education is how do we explore both of these spaces? And I think from a design perspective, the digital realm only opens up creative possibilities. There's so much more room to play, to experiment in fashion design. And so for us, this is exciting. The prestige is there because this is the world, and there's so many more creative possibilities that are just unleashed in these spaces.
Yeah, no, it's really amazing the opportunities that they have nowadays. Kathy, we love your famous Coco Chanel quote. It was, the world's next Coco Chanel is probably a 10-year-old girl who is currently designing avatar skins on Roblox. So I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the data you've seen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, congratulations on the launch of the course and the report and everything. It's for me, I always take the approach. I am a mom, so I'm going to bring that to this panel. I've got 3 kids, one's Gen Z, the rest are Gen Alpha, and I look at what they do and how they approach this. And it's true that blurry edge between physical and virtual does not exist. It's equally as important to them. So the way that they're dressing themselves, it's about self-expression. It's about culture. It's about the change in mindset. I almost tell people you need to change your chip. Just because it happens in the virtual space does not make it less real. This is very real to everyone that is in the gaming space and anyone that lives in these platforms. But yeah, what I'm seeing is this really interesting shift, especially in my conversations with a lot of the fashion brands that I do work with. I started working with them back in like 2019, 2020, and the evolution of how fast they want to go is pretty impressive. I also think there's something really poetic in the fact that, the Web 1, Web 2 era were pushed by certain industries, I'm not necessarily going to mention them, but not necessarily industries that, had everyone's goodwill in mind or et cetera. I do feel like this new era of the metaverse that we're heading into, the fact that fashion, art, architecture are the ones that are really pushing the technology to a limit is poetic, because we all make fashion choices every day in the physical world. Now we're making them in the virtual space as well. But there's something truly poetic and beautiful in that itself.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like you're right. The shift in the mindset, and especially people need to be exploring these platforms and experiencing it themselves. I also have 3 little ones who are on Roblox, and I see the world through their eyes now, and how it's just an extension of themselves. And so I think once you see that, that's when your mindset really shifts to understand your audience. It's really important. And Gemma, over to you, drawing the parallel between physical and digital. I know you mentioned digital fashion brought you back into the zone, complementing your work with the physical fashion. So what are your thoughts on the data?
Well, I think it's really interesting, and I think it's so exciting that actually hearing everybody speak, because there's so many elements, and particularly for me, the speed of this evolution. And as I was saying, the biggest part and the moment where I call it the penny drop for me was witnessing, I'm a mum of 3 kids myself, but witnessing my goddaughter, who I'd never particularly seen as what I call in the traditional sense, creative. And one day I was just sat with her, and she, I'd said, this was 3 years ago at Christmas. What would you like for Christmas? And she said, my avatar needs new shoes. And I found these shoes and I want them. And it really mattered to her. And her mum was like, no, Jemmy, you're not buying her those. And I was like, that's the beauty of being a godmother. And suddenly it became very apparent to me that her digital presence really did mean more to her. It was really apparent. But this is a child who now, at the time was 7, who is now 10, who can fully code. And I think there's something incredibly immersive, but also hugely creative in a way that she is living in this creative zone of creating her avatar, and how actually I've witnessed that has played out with her actual emotions and how she is presenting herself in the real world. I always use the saying, when you look good, you feel good, and that equals confidence. And that for me is the blur. That is where it actually becomes ultimately at its most exciting, because we're seeing that transition. We're seeing how playing with one element means that you can then step into the other world, and vice versa. And that is when, for me, Metaverse becomes hugely exciting, is because there is no transition. We can play with all of this. It can be a hand-holding, coexisting worlds that just makes Web3 a very smooth transition into our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's funny too, when you look back, 10, 20 years, all of that has happened. There were people who said, I won't be on the internet, or I won't create a social channel, or we won't buy clothes online. That sounds ridiculous. And so you really think about the why of people. Why do they want digital fashion? I think that's what's so amazing about this report, is it's really bringing out the why, and you really understand this audience and why it is an extension of themselves. Okay, well, thank you so much.
I also think it has another beauty, is that actually, if there's some things that you can't afford in IRL, you can experiment within Metaverse. And that is the beauty of this creativity, and the fact that we are now building a world that more and more people are able to actually also become creators.
Yes, like Jenny and Vivian, it's amazing what you're creating on the platform, but I agree, it's opening up this opportunity to everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next slide, we want to talk about digital fashion enabling self-expression. So just like in the physical world, community members on platforms like Roblox tend to connect with and react to others based on the way they look and the way they dress, which can have a profound impact on their self-confidence and relationships. Digital fashion enables true self-expression, allowing people to express their individuality, feel good about themselves, feel more connected to peers, both in the physical and digital worlds. And interestingly enough, people also change their avatar styles similar to how we do in the physical world, based on their moods or their feelings of that particular day. If they see a new item, they want to buy it, they want to try it on right away. And we love seeing that people dress up for occasions and where they're going, but also even changing, based on IRL weather and seasons. So today it's a little bit more gloomy and, cold. I'll be wearing a sweater on my avatar. And I want to see, so Gemma, is this similar to what we're seeing in physical fashion?
Absolutely. And I think that, again, that is where these worlds are so beautifully aligning. But I think there's, as I say, this is a playful space that actually you can then socialize, you can then see movement, you can see also how people are representing themselves. And very much with our Gen Z, we're very much seeing that this is an extension of who they are. And that for me is actually played out beautifully. And this report has really demonstrated that effortlessly and is testament to a lot of what I've been discussing this last year. And I think one of the points that you made was the vast growth between Q1 and Q3. I'm seeing it myself with all the brands and partnerships that we're doing with Dubbit Studio, everyone that we were talking in Q1 and the speed that they are wanting to go at. And actually, what I love, moreover, is seeing how experimenting in Metaverse means we can see how it plays out, but then we can drop it into bricks and mortar stores. And the response to that has been phenomenal.
Yeah, I think everybody on this panel can attest to that. It's happening so quickly and more
Yeah.
people are starting to understand the value. Yes.
Yeah.
And Jenny and Vivian, I want to hear from you. Maybe start with Jenny. Do you hear from the community that digital fashion makes people feel more connected to peers, more confident? Are you experiencing that? Have you seen that with other users?
Oh yeah, all the time. There are many times that I have people that buy my creations and they will share it with me on social platforms. They will share it. They will even give me ideas to combine with my own creation. And so it definitely is a great way to bring people together, fashion alone. And just to touch base back on what Gemma had said earlier about one of her quotes, she had mentioned about her daughter, or I'm sorry, her granddaughter. I'm so sorry. But,
Goddaughter.
But yeah, like those shoes that your granddaughter had wanted, like those are, there are so many people on the platform that are genuinely like-minded. They want those shoes. They want that limited item. They want that top. They want something that replicates, real life fashion. But yeah, definitely with peers though, to circle back with peers though, and all of just Roblox community in general, most definitely, I always see like so many amazing, even by Vivian, a lot of fellow yellow UGC creators. Also definitely, I see their clothes everywhere, combined with so many different, the best way to put it is just so many different people's work on the platform.
Yeah.
And
there's
it's such yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, what Jenny was mentioning, I just make a lot of sets and I make a lot of colors as well. And so I see people in an area just like all wearing the same outfit with different colors, all huddled up together. And you're like, I know that they definitely run the server,
Yeah,
exactly. It's their way of finding their tribe. And I think that's where it also, when I was looking at the early period and when I was starting to create as well, how I'm using real life fashion in terms of, inspiration of Thierry Mugler, Paco Rabanne. There is so many elements that actually replicate so effortlessly and so easily into Avatar. There was something so Avatar, dating back all of those years that looked so relevant to now. My early career with Lee at McQueen was very replicable to the world we're in now. And I think having this opportunity to explore creativity. And something that I asked you girls before was, where do you get your inspiration? I'm always looking at WGSN and really looking at trending and how are we starting to navigate into this world? How are we starting to create those trend predictions? And I'm really curious to know where you guys are getting that information also, or being inspired, should I say.
I would say personally for me, it would be Instagram, Pinterest, the internet, Google, the whole thing, pop culture, definitely fantasy. Like, I mean, gosh, there's so much from real life to derive and then throw your own spin on it. And like one of my quotes that I had seen in the report was, you know, like if I wanted to wear this in real life, I couldn't go out and get, you know, wet in it. But I can definitely go in the metaverse and wear the same outfit and dive into a swimming pool or fly around with it. The things that I cannot, like, you know, butterfly wings on the back or something, imagine that, or whatever, just things that I cannot do in real world. So,
well, I think there's something really magical about how that ignites our creativity physically as well. And, you know, I talk a lot about auras because I think auras are so special in Metaverse, and kind of leaving that trail of glitter, leaving different superpowers. So for me, this is where then our own mental storytelling becomes explosive. That moment with my goddaughter in those shoes ignited this freedom of creativity in me that I think was missing as a child, where I felt a little bit misunderstood because I was having to constantly make and create to get the looks I wanted. I didn't have accessibility to those things. So I was making and creating them physically. Suddenly we're in a world that we can create those and make them instantaneously. And that for me is where it becomes electric and exciting and limitless. And I think the word limitless when it comes to fashion brands and branding as a whole is actually possibly one of the biggest key points for this period of its next growth. And because I think the conversation has massively shifted from having to explain to people what it is to them understanding what it is, but how it can now play out.
Absolutely. I encourage people to go in, create their avatar, you know, try on different virtual items, and then they'll start to experiment. I think that's when you really start to feel the excitement that others feel. So, and I've been out
even community creators, you know, like like me and Vivian, for instance, or, you know, we've collabed with plenty of other creatives on the platform too. And those two, like me and her, like, let's just say that for an example, meshing together our ideas and all that stuff, the things with two individuals coming together with real life different thoughts and stuff like that, like can merge into such a beautiful creation and something that's, you know, not worn in the physical world.
And Jenny, to that point, I think it's important because I do think that this new moment that is upon us, and Gemma, you mentioned the word limitless. Like, where do I get my inspiration? I'm in the trenches. Like, I'm trying to solve these problems and these issues every single day. So like my inspiration comes from the it's hard, right? Sometimes it can be so hard. Like, I'll give you an example. So when we did Electric Fest, I produced the motion capture concert. And we're creating this beautiful virtual couture gown for Madison Beer. We spent probably more women hours, more manpower, let's use the word manpower, whatever, on creating that virtual couture dress than it probably took to create it in the physical world, right? Granted, we created a very different, couture. For me, it was sitting down and working with the artist to say, what is your style? What do you want to look like? I always say that it's this creating these virtual moments of impact. And that's what I call virtual couture. It's like, let's think of like J-Lo and the green dress, which most people have a reference in their brain of, right? But how do you start to create those virtual moments of impact in Metaverse, in game? And I think that there's something really beautiful there when you're in the trenches, like we didn't motion capture the dress, we motion captured the person. So then we had to we didn't motion capture the hair. So then how do we add, movement to all these sorts of things? I do want to say something I think is really interesting because I think we tend to overfocus our conversation in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, but this is also a moment for everyone else. Like I'm an older millennial. It's a moment for everyone else to reinvent your careers. I have reinvented my career. I can say I've become a virtual fashion designer thanks to the first thing I did with the Fabricant. I've become a virtual concert producer. Do I think I would have ever
I can
said that?
relate.
No.
Yeah, I
I
can
also
definitely
think-
relate.
I also think there's another really beautiful saying, which is just simply test and learn. And for me, that is something that's very applicable when I'm ever in a meeting and we are meeting branding partners and we're working with designers and we're working, again, a bit like you said, Kathy, with individuals, you know, on a styling level. My first words are, let's just test and learn. It's almost like this liberation of freedom. It's a liberation to just say, let everything go and test and learn. There's something so much to be learned through experimentation. And actually, IRL has started to prevent that. This is about the liberation side of all of that. We are right. And I love that saying, like in the trenches, because that's when great creativity comes. And that comes from test and learn.
I think that's what's so powerful about this report. And Christina, to go back to kind of your question and what we're talking about is that this research has not if I'm putting on my dean and professor hat for a moment, like this is really innovative, new cutting edge research. Before this, most of the research, at least in academia, that looked at avatars, virtual fashion, looked at millennials, older millennials, said that there was a disconnect between the physical world and digital world. There wasn't this connection. There really wasn't. It wasn't a moment of self-expression or trying to mirror your physical self digitally or explore, experiment. And this research shows that we are in a new era, right? This is an era where there is this connection, and we see the data from everyone who responded to this report and to the survey, and how important digital fashion is to mental health, to self-expression, to mood, whether it's a safe space to play or whether there's a carryover from the physical to the digital, it is connected to who we are. And in fashion research and studies, one of my colleagues who contributed to the report, our associate director of MPS, Daniel Drack, one of his quotes talks about this theory we have in fashion about enclothed cognition, the idea that what we wear impacts our mood and how we engage
100%.
every day. And what this report shows is that is not limited to the physical space. This is in immersive social spaces too. We see from the responses how we style our avatars impacts our mood. How we're feeling in that moment impacts how we're going to style our avatars, what we're going to choose to wear. So I think what's so key is the role of fashion, both physically, digitally, on mental health, on self-expression, on mood, and that this is critical to who we are as people. And I think the report makes that so clear, and it's really adding something new from a research perspective to the knowledge and literature we have in the space.
Yeah, 100%, Ben. I feel like to have a space where you feel like you can be anybody that you want to be and you can express yourself freely, where it's a safe environment, that's so important to everybody. And it's less about critiquing what someone's wearing or commenting on it. It's about like, I love that. Let's sharing ideas, creating together. So this is just an amazing, really special space for people to feel those feelings. Okay, let's go on to some more of the research. And I wanted to remind the audience, if you have any questions, please put those in the Q&A down below. And if we have time at the end, we'll get to as many questions as we can. So IRL trends impact metaverse fashion and vice versa. It's very interesting to see how quickly IRL trends find reflection both in community creation and purchases on Roblox. But what people wear in immersive spaces also impact their choices in the physical world. So if we look at the data, 70% of Gen Z say that their avatars dress like their IRL self, and 70% get physical style inspiration from dressing their avatars. And if we take an IRL trend of 2022, like Y2K, we saw a massive explosion both in creation and purchases of these items on Roblox this year. And for some, they may discover this trend on Roblox and then wear that in the physical world. So starting with you, Ben, I just would love to hear when something is trending online or on the runways, and it's especially true with street fashion, those ideas often get turned into physical designs and products, but that's not an easy, quick process. On Roblox, it can literally take a few days for a trend to show up. So I want to hear from you, your thoughts on what this is changing, how this is changing the speed of fashion creation and what this means for designers and brands.
Yeah, well, within kind of a Western world and Western understanding of fashion, fashion has always been about change and speed. But we've seen in the physical space, right, the real harm that speed causes on workers and designers and the production cycle, on our environment and planet, right? The speed by which physical brands try to respond to trends and produce so quickly hurts people and the planet. I think what's so exciting about digital fashion creation is we can respond to trends in ways that are a lot more sustainable, both from the environment, but also from the design perspective, mental health, humanity. And so I think that, yes, you can respond to change so quickly and trends so quickly, but we can do so in a way that is truly conscious of people and the planet.
Kathy, interested to get your thoughts on these stats and if anything's surprising to you.
Not really. I mean, because we're all in this space, right? So it's not surprising. I think it might be surprising to people in the traditional fashion industry. They're like, oh, this is really happening. Yeah, it's not just a marketing activation. This is actually a potential new revenue stream for you, a potential new way of doing business, a path to commerce in a different way. For me, it's like culture is being made in these spaces. And if you do not understand that you're not getting up to speed. So I think that's important. A big signal for me, to be honest, 100% honest, was New York Fashion Week this year. I've been to New York Fashion Week before. I would get invited. I would sit, and someone would ask me, like, what do you do? And I would say, like, I work in technology, almost like a whisper, right? You're like, why is the tech person here? And this year, the beginning of Fashion Month, I mean, we were the sexiest people there. Like, I was like, I felt like Carly Claus. I don't know. I was there, And I'll tell you something that happened. So Tommy Hilfiger, big applause to the work they're doing, the Tommy team and Tommy himself leading the work that, the vision for Metaverse. I was invited to the fashion show, the return to New York Fashion Week for him. I get pulled in, I go in, I get pulled into the VIP, which has never happened to me before. And all of a sudden I'm there and it's like Ferocious, myself, Gary V, G Money, like the Web3 people. And then like right next to us, it's like Kris Jenner and Travis Barker and La Roche. And that moment for me was a giant signal of like the fashion industry, the traditional fashion industry is starting to get it. They're starting to understand that there is this shift happening that they saw as a marketing activation that can actually become that, if you are getting inspiration from your avatar on how what you're going to wear in the physical world, it's a time for the fashion industry, the traditional fashion industry, to come into the future with us. So, yeah.
And I love seeing the thought leaders in each industry, especially fashion right now, like Tommy Hilfiger, who's coming out and talking about experimenting and testing and learning, like you said, Gemma. It's just really exciting to hear their excitement for the space and where they're going. And I want to hear from you, Gemma, about how about those users getting physical style inspiration from dressing their avatars? So I know in preparation for this, we talked about a brand, Caperni, and their designers brought up in interviews that some of their boxy silhouettes were influenced by Roblox. So are you seeing Metaverse fashion impacting IRL in your styling work?
Absolutely. And I think it's incredible how that has transitioned. But I think it is that two-way thing, because I think that ultimately from Q1 to Q3, the level of understanding, which is exactly what we were just talking about. And I think really good that Kathy's just highlighted that transition at New York Fashion Week was huge. I remember literally, I've been doing this now for just over 3 years, but I remember at the beginning of this year, people were still very nervous. And even when I made my announcement, it was very much about me timing it correctly, because I felt otherwise it would go over people's heads. What my instant response was from several, having had a background in luxury goods, was, okay, you're giving this validity. I'm now understanding that this is something I need to sit up and, make sense of. And I think we're definitely seeing that. And I know that Jenny was talking about that earlier, is that we're definitely seeing that transition. And I think that has that impact because of the instantaneous nature of it. The fact that people can create and then it can actually go to bricks and mortar is where it starts to become exciting. But what Ben was also saying is the sustainable aspect of this is that, again, we can test and learn through that avenue too. And I think as a fashion stylist, what I'm seeing with avatars, I mean, certainly with my own self, is the playfulness. I love the fact mine is always depicted by my mood. I love the fact that actually my avatar walks these days better in heels than I do. But, post-pandemic, that's just a given. But the reality is actually how great that she wears the shoes that I once did and just really rocks them. it matters to me. Certain elements really represent how I am in real life. And the other parts are incredibly playful. And I actually play a lot with that. And especially when it comes to clients, I think it is about that identifying of their individual requirements. You know, I reference a lot IRL because I think there's so many parallels. And as a fashion stylist, I've always said it's about understanding what does the individual, the celebrity want to gain out of this moment. And for me, that is parallel to the world of Metaverse. It is the same thing. For what purpose? This isn't just a media moment. This is about getting much more deeper into it, because actually the outcome of what can happen is actually extensive, huge, and massively exciting.
Yeah, I think if you dig into the why, you're always going to understand how do you want to engage, what kind of story do you want to tell, what moments do you want to create, and what feelings do you want to have people experience.
And I think that for me, I still love creating something in IRL, like a mood board that I then translate into then Metaverse. I like that process. I like that creativity of creating my mood board, creating that visual, knowing then how I want to translate that into the world of Metaverse and how I want to see those physical, but the movement, the playfulness, the understanding of the vibe is really important.
Yeah. All right, next slide, we're going to get into Gen Z. Survey says Gen Z will pay for digital fashion. I think that this surprised a lot of people as well, just how many people are really valuing these physical items. We established why digital fashion and identity are so meaningful for communities in 3D immersive spaces. And this explains why in our survey, nearly 3 in 4 say they will spend money on digital fashion. And 1 in 4 have spent anywhere from $20 to $100 on a single item. And if we really think about those innovators and thought leaders, I will say, Gucci was one that came onto our platform, and they had during Gucci Garden, a Gucci B bag that resold for more than the physical item. We also saw Carly Kloss, another innovator, who walked down the runway of the Carolina Herrera show, and her dress was available on Roblox immediately. And Jenny was a part of this, recreating that dress, which was so special. And we've seen that resold multiple times for over $1,000. And one of those dresses resold for $5,000. So the story of the Gucci bag that resold for more than its physical value, the Carolina Herrera dress, this all points to the online community's interest in digital fashion. Jenny, I'd love to hear from you. What was it like to be involved in this Carolina Herrera dress moment that was just mind-blowing for everybody?
It was mind-blowing for me whenever I was invited on to it. I'll forever be grateful for that one. To Carolina, to Carly Kloss, to even Sawhorse that helped, cultivate the whole thing to happen. But my experience with it was just like I was presented with, the dress. And this was before I had ever seen it on Carly. So, I was just like going off of, just a sketch, and, it had to be exact. So for me, I replicated the dress as best as I could, which I think I nailed it. I think I did. And it's definitely it's definitely an acquired taste. If you're into gothic or bubbly, pink or whatever, this isn't the dress for you. But if you're into, florals and lovely spring type, outfits like Carly Kloss was wearing in that, and how beautifully she showcased it, then yeah, that's the dress for you. But working on it was just, it was so much fun. Going in from just the base of the creation and the software programs that I use, going into, the texturing, you guys don't know, but you do or you don't, I don't know. But going into the texturing part of it and just all of it, even getting feedback from Carolina through, their team and Carly, and then seeing her rock it. Oh yeah. It was just an unforgettable thing for me, and something that I will always cherish to my, right here, always.
Well, you created a beautiful digital replica of that dress. And I would say, like we were talking about, times are definitely changing. I mean, can you imagine years and years ago, a designer giving you what's going to come out on the runway beforehand so that you can recreate? Yeah. I mean, that's unheard of. And I think, Carly being she's just so forward thinking, and really,
yes. And she's so lovely. And, just like with what you were just saying, like, I never would have thought, someone like me, like to ever even cross paths with, any of the likes of these people. And they're just, from my experience, especially with Carolina and Carly Kloss, was just amazing, and Carly Kloss is just so free, and she wants you to kind of, that she wants you to, tap into your creative side whenever it comes to, doing UGC stuff with her and working with her and things like that, and what she's bringing to, the metaverse. So
Well, I think we all love Carly. She's empowering digital fashion and
she
creative.
is.
Really amazing, I think. And Vivian, as designer selling on Roblox, what sells in the metaverse, and what's considered coveted when it comes to virtual items that users are willing to pay for?
Well, going back to what Jenny said a bit about the dress being like, if you aren't bubbly, if you aren't gothic, this dress isn't for you. That's like a beautiful thing about like the metaverse making fashion on it, because it doesn't necessarily matter how many copies you make of one piece, because they all sell individually. So it's kind of like an on-demand thing. And it goes back to like what Ben said earlier about like fast fashion. It kind of it doesn't make waste in this world. And so anybody you can make the most unique looking thing and somebody will buy it. And that's beautiful to me, I think.
Yeah, you'll find your tribe, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and I agree with that.
Here.
Sorry.
I cannot wait, Jenny and Vivian, and any of Ben's students that come from Parsons, to be front row virtually at your fashion shows in the future, because fashion is changing. Fashion Week is changing. I'll give you an example. I got added to the lineup for Vogue's Forces of Fashion, the global event they do every year. Went down to Mexico. The event, I spoke about Metaverse, etc. I came back to New York to Vogue's Forces of Fashion. I didn't stay the whole time, but I didn't see anyone on stage talking about virtual fashion. It was all traditional fashion. And I was sitting there with Francine Ballard from Metagold and my friend, and we said, this is going to look very different next year or the year after that. And it's going to be folks like you, Jenny and Vivian and everyone and all of us that are going to be the ones, those forces of fashion are changing. And the people that you're listening to right now and the work that has been doing at Roblox, like that is what the force of fashion that's coming, and it's coming fast, it's coming furious, and it's changed. And the fact that most of us are women or BIPOC or whatever, I think that's a wonderful statement as well as to how fashion is changing.
It's really cool that you mentioned like having virtual fashion shows, because like I remember like 8 years ago, I've been on Roblox for like 10 years. Like 8 years ago, back when we only had like 2D clothing to wear, there was so many fashion like shows. People would spend like 10 minutes getting dressed and like, best in show, that kind of thing. That sort of thing existed back then. And now it's like becoming more of a reality with like mixing these two worlds together. It's really exciting.
It really is.
I think when we're using even the term exciting, you can feel the energy. We're all online, but we can feel the energy. And I think that is where, it is so exciting, because we are talking in a way that is about the momentum. But the momentum is because of the energy behind it. And the energy and I think the community is incredibly inclusive. And I think that is what I love about this, is that people are always, I've obviously been interviewed a lot by journalists, and there's always this slight fear, this kind of what if? And that is because they don't understand the why. But the bottom line of all of this is you can see from even our conversation today, the energy, the motivation, the forecasting we're creating. We've seen it for the past, period of time, and the velocity of speed is of another level now.
Yeah, I think I totally agree, Gemma. I think the excitement and the passion you feel, but if you think about a runway, New York Fashion Week, and how many people can actually experience that, if you do this in the digital, the virtual space, and say Vivian and Jenny, you guys have a virtual fashion show, how many people around the world can experience that? There's millions and millions at one time, and they will be talking about it. They'll feel like they were actually there. That they'll bring that excitement with them even after they're done watching.
Yeah.
I think the point
100%.
of access here is so important. If you think about how much it costs to start a physical fashion label. I see this for our graduates all the time, right? Like a studio space, equipment to produce samples, the material, putting together a fashion show, all of those costs, hiring a staff, right? Either you need to have some type of ability to access venture capital, or it only privileges those who are coming from wealth, which automatically is classed and raced and all of these other things in terms of access. Or alumni are going into huge debt or working multiple jobs just to try to fund their label. I think what's so exciting here is that those barriers to entry as a designer and starting your own thing aren't there, right? You can do this using the equipment, the technology you have at home, what you've been using always. And so immediately this provides so much more equity and access to folks that want to get into fashion design, that want to start their own label. And that is really going to transform who we see as creatives, the ideas, the cultural heritage that they bring into their designs. So I think when we talk about what inclusion in fashion looks like, how we advance equity, this is a critical way to do that, because those barriers to entry and those barriers that have been based around systems of privilege and oppression automatically have started to diminish when we look at creating fashion digitally. And that is exciting for the future of not just the ideas that we see manifest in design, but who is valued and seen as a creative.
But I
Yes.
think there's great power in that, Ben, because if you look at someone like Mr. Beast, like he is who he is, right? And he's making a lot of money off of who he is. No, it doesn't matter what platform he's on, right? So I think that the newer generation, they already come with an audience. They come with like, with an engagement there. I myself, I'll tell you something, like I'm launching, like this is crazy that I'm doing these things. For me, it's mind blowing. I'm launching a collaboration and a Web3 jewelry brand. I'm looking at launching an NFT project with, with different physical items with NFC chips that are NFTs. Like I'm in there trying to figure out how to sew these things like into, and how do you maintain these? Like it's crazy. Like once again, like the people here, we're the ones in the trenches doing the hard work so that more people can follow suit right behind us and be those forces of fashion. So I don't know. I love the energy, Gemma, like you mentioned. I feel energized. I don't know. I'm just so thrilled to be here with all of you.
I
want to echo that. And I also think that there's this feeling that when we talk about being part of this, pioneering group, I think that it's very evident that I really love what Ben just said. I love how it has opened the doors. Fashion has always been quite closed at certain periods for certain people. Suddenly we're seeing this emerging volume, which also means they're not restricted by getting a job. They can be their own entrepreneur. They can create literally from the day that they start to be, just inspired. My goddaughter is a great example. At 7 years old, she's coding and creating. That is phenomenal to me. That is something that when you used to talk about coding, you talked about learning to code at uni. The fact that kids are learning to code at this age and understanding what that means, they are already onto the path of their own creativity.
Yeah, and I think especially with Roblox, we say that you can be anybody that you want to be. And you think about that's maybe expressing yourself through your avatar, but it also means you could be anybody you want to be by being a creator or an animator or not, or you have that opportunity. And what I love is no matter what, going off of what you said, Ben, is no matter where in the world you're from, your background, your education, if you come to the platform, maybe you don't see something that's for you, but you can create that. And that's how you're going to shape the future, is everybody has this opportunity to create something for them and others. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, what consumers want from digital fashion designers and brands. Now, this is some data that we thought would be very helpful for aspiring current and future digital fashion designers and brands. So we asked what people want to see from them. And it's interesting that the top two answers were new, different clothing that people can experiment with that they won't try IRL. And two, casual clothing similar to the brand's clothing they wear IRL. So Kathy, you spoke about this a little bit, but you recently created the couture for the artists that are performing in Walmart Land, a brand that your studio Journey works with. You were offering different clothing that doesn't exist IRL, and you talked a little bit about this, but maybe elaborate as how how did you approach the design? Are there future projects that you're working on? And how do you think about having that come to life?
Yeah, I think after that project, we had a lot of celebrities and a lot of people that want to create those virtual moments of impact come to us and be like, okay, how do we do this? For me, it was really interesting. Everything started when we did the motion capture of the concerts. We sat down with the artists themselves and the teams and said, here are some initial ideas. We sketched them out and said, this is an initial idea. And we started working with them. It was a process, right? On like the different looks. How do we activate them? So like Kane Brown style, he's a country artist going more into pop, very different style than a young blood who's a punk rock star. He jumps around. He almost broke the technology. And then Madison Beer, who's more like a beautiful Disney princess type of look. So yeah, we went through many different iterations, from the concepting, the design, putting it in on Roblox and using Roblox Studio and the platform to actually make it work, right? So I'm taking it from this vision into reality and then making sure it worked with the concert, with the motion capture, with the songs. It was a big endeavor. I would say it was both the music side was a big endeavor, but the fashion side, the virtual couture, and I call it virtual couture because what we're trying to do there is create not these massive looks that everyone has. It's more like these artists get to wear something that they can't wear in the physical world in their virtual concert. They want to make these statements. They want to show up. And for these three artists, the way they showed up virtually was incredibly important to them. I would say it's equally as important as it was in the physical space. But yeah, we got to give, and you know what the biggest thing was during the concert, the fans were like, they were loving the music, but you could hear the fans saying, I love Kane Brown's tennis shoes or sneakers, or I love, Madison Beer's dress. And that was the moment where I said, it matters because the fans at the end of the day are the ones that appreciate this. So.
Yeah. So for any of the panelists, any tips and tricks for up and coming metaverse designers and brands?
I think big. I think big and dream big, because I think the limitless nature, and especially what Kathy was just saying, fashion is nothing without music and music is nothing without fashion. I use that analogy. You look good, you feel good, and that equals confidence. All of these things are being told to us. Every panelist is saying that in their own way. And I think that if you come into this space, I think use the freedom of creativity from within your heart and soul, because there's something so empowering about breaking all the rules of what the traditional sense of IRL has taught us. It's like undoing what we've been taught. It's about liberating your feeling. And I think the minute you're in that space, we're doing something that is going to be pioneering, that is going to be exciting, that is going to be hugely innovative. And I think for anybody who is watching this, who is thinking, what am I going to do? This is the space you need to be in. I think that don't get me wrong, I still love and eat and breathe IRL fashion. There is no getting away, and that will always be part of me. But am I massively excited? Like, I pinch myself literally every night I get into bed, and I have to stop myself from dreaming about it, because I get so carried away with the possibilities of, oh, what if I do this? What about this? And it's so exciting that is the world that I think for anybody entering the world of fashion now, this is the place to be.
That's a massive opportunity.
Yeah, and I would further put, like, with creators like me and Vivian, and even other UGC creators, or even just designers in the metaverse in general, take us seriously. Like, we take it just as serious as the real life, fashion brands do. And we put our all into this. We spend years learning the programs, the software, the things to make the stuff that we make, whether it be, a regular crop top or a very metallic-y, shiny butterfly wing set. I don't know. But, just to say, like, just taking us seriously and, making us feel valued, making, especially when you want to collaborate and work with us, or even come into the metaverse and things like that. I just think that, digital creators or fashion designers should be taken seriously. I think it's kind of a little area where people, I don't know. I just think we're just now slowly getting taken seriously by some, you know what I mean? I think we're gaining weight is the best way to put it.
Besides like making our own clothes, a lot of designers on Roblox specifically are looking for work in this field. And it'd be really cool, like just saying, seek out Roblox developers familiar with the platform, get a gist of what's in and what's, coming in, and see what you're going to go into, because there is a lot here and it's really cool to be one of the first.
Yeah, always learning from you both. Okay, we're gonna go to the next slide. I know we're gonna probably go a few minutes over, but we really wanted to, this is an important slide, so I wanted to get into this one. What Gen Z wants: diverse customization options and inclusive designs. Again, having a space to be anybody that you want to be. Feel free to express yourselves. Looking at the data, it's clear consumers want as many options as possible. Our vision on Roblox is people should be whoever they want to be. And because of the community creation on the platform, there is limitless variety. So 70% or close to this number want a full range of skin tones, body sizes, hair colors, textures, styles. 7 in 10 say it's very or extremely important for clothing to be inclusive. And we are working to enable that with our Roblox technology of layered clothing that came out earlier this year that really powers this, where the technology allows for any item to fit, layered clothing items to fit on any avatar body type. So I know, Vivian, this is a big focus for you to create content and items with a focus on inclusivity and representation. So how do you approach this when designing content?
Yeah, I'm really focused on bringing more unique, defining fashion to Roblox. And that includes making hairstyles that aren't just like straight up and down. For example, curly hair is an involved process to model and texture, but it can be done, and it can be done right. It's an underrepresented style because of how intricate it is to make, and I've been seeing a ton of new artists.
A lot of
pop out.
practice.
It does. It is very time consuming, but very like rewarding when you finish. I've been seeing a lot of new artists pop up with extensive like knowledge on how to make these hairstyles, and that's really fun. It'd be nice to grow that community more. Like, people want curly hair, and because they don't see it often online, it's hard to create, and it's rewarding to learn.
Yeah, great. And then Ben, I would love to hear from you. I know this is also a big focus for Parsons as an organization. So please explain how fashion is set up in physical versus digital and inclusivity.
Yeah, I mean, social and climate justice are the core to everything we do in our curriculum at Fashion and Parsons. And I think one of the challenges is that we've been having for, almost a decade, this conversation about the importance of inclusion and diversity in fashion. And in physical fashion, that requires a total system change, right? The system of physical fashion is based on this exclusive standardization process where we design for one body type. We size up, we size down. Mostly we try to size up, but in a way that fails. Folks with bodies who are larger, folks that don't fit this white, tall, non-disabled ideal are excluded. Physical fashion has been based on exclusion as an industry. I think and now we're trying to change it, but that doesn't require a modification. That requires us to really re-examine the entire system of physical fashion and the process by which we design. I think what's exciting about Roblox and digital fashion creation is that inclusion is built in at the very beginning, right? With layered clothing, we can design, and immediately that can work for all body sizes and all body types. That can work for non-humans too, if that's your avatar, right? And I think that this is really about how do we create fashion that allows everyone, whatever body they have, wherever they're from, to express who they are and who they want to be. And I'm excited for what physical fashion can learn as we reimagine the design process to be more inclusive from virtual fashion. And I think there's a really big lesson there. And I think we see once again that for wearers, for consumers, inclusion and diversity is central in driving their perspectives and choices. People want avatars with their hair color, their skin color. They want body types that are diverse and reflect the reality of humanity. So I think this is one of the most exciting things. I'm excited for what physical fashion is going to learn from digital fashion here, and that this is a space where we can just be confident in exactly who we are and celebrate that with a whole range of fashion choices.
Wow, I love this panel so much. I wish we could keep chatting. And we have about 5 more minutes. I want to go through just everybody around. Go give me one sentence, maybe on 2023 predictions that you have. Let's maybe start with Kathy.
It's not a prediction, but I'll say in the metaverse, we're all world builders, and now is your time to build. go build this future. We are all welcome. It's not just one type of person. We're all welcome to build the future.
Amazing. Gemma?
Ask the why and don't fear test and learn. It's your best friend, and your progression and your understanding only comes through experimentation. So that for me is how people can get on board. I think there is fear. So if in that moment, the only way to actually get out of that and see, because what we are going to predict is this is going nowhere. We've seen the explosion from Q1 to Q3. It's going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Keep innovating.
Yeah.
Ben?
I see that everyone who graduates with a degree in fashion design will be able to design physically and digitally. That this is the requirement of the future fashion creatives, and that we have an amazing community right here of digital fashion creatives that can join fashion education as instructors, as faculty, to help teach the amazing skills and creativity that you bring to life every single day.
All right, Vivian?
I would like malls to make a return. I enjoyed the aspect of walking around and being able to shop whatever I wanted to shop. And Metaverse malls would be very fun to make a comeback with. The last few years have definitely been a trial run, but I'd love to walk around in a mall and get stuff in real life from the digital world again.
Great, Jenny?
I think that you're going to see a lot of like my predictions would be a lot of the youth, even like the youngsters that are growing up in like I think one of you have, I'm sorry, someone's child programs and like or granddaughter, Gemma, I'm sorry. But like you're going to see lots and lots of more of that. That's my prediction, and they're going to dive into those software programs to learn how to make all of those digital fashions, and they are not afraid to ask questions. They want to know. And sharing is caring. And so I hope that going forward, that artists aren't afraid to kind of share a little bit of like their process or what they want to do, and don't make it so secretive. It's a very open community, and we all like to help. And I also agree with Vivian. I would love to see a lot more of, like just a lot of us fashionistas or anything like that going into like spaces like malls or social experiences or anything like that, even games. I want to kick butt wearing a dress, fighting a skeleton, or whoever.
I love it. Well, thank you so much to our amazing panel, to everybody who joined today. We have a lot of questions I know we didn't get to, but we're going to save those and then find a way to answer those perhaps in a blog post and share those with you later. So thank you again. This was recorded, so you'll see this as well later. But thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.